Your daughter isn't disabled. It's her boyfriend forcing her to pretend she is. David Thompson never imagined that a sunny Sunday afternoon in Central Park, Washington, D.C. would completely change his perception of his own daughter's life. The 57-year-old businessman was walking distractedly among the trees when he felt someone tug on the hem of his navy blue blazer. That's when he heard the words that would make his world collapse. A boy of just 13, with eyes full of tears and a voice trembling with nervousness, whispered that his daughter Emily didn't need that wheelchair she had been using for 2 years. "Mr. Thompson, I know you're going to think I'm lying, but your daughter, she can walk just fine," said Tyler, the boy from the neighborhood, looking all around as if he feared being overheard by someone. David felt his heart race. Over the past few months, small details about Emily's behavior had been bothering his mind. The way her boyfriend Derek always controlled every conversation, every doctor's appointment, every moment of the 23-year-old's routine. "What do you mean, Tyler? What are you talking about?" The boy took a deep breath before continuing, his hand still clutching the fabric of David's blazer. "I live in the house next to yours, remember? My room overlooks your backyard. I've seen Emily running after Buddy when he runs off with his bone several times. She climbs on the chair by the pool to get the mangoes from the tree. Just yesterday she was dancing alone in the garden when she thought no one was watching." The boy's words echoed in David's mind like a distant and disturbing echo. Emily had suffered a supposed accident 2 years ago, right after she started dating Derek. An accident that never left visible after effects, that was never properly explained by the doctors her boyfriend always insisted on choosing personally. "Tyler, are you sure about what you're saying? About this is very serious. I wanted to tell you sooner, Mr. Thompson, but I was afraid no one would believe me. I'm just a kid, right? But I can't stand seeing Emily like this anymore. She gets so sad when Derek is around, and when he leaves, she changes completely. She gets happy, plays with the dogs, laughs out loud. David felt the ground give way beneath his feet. For the past 2 years, he had dedicated himself completely to caring for his daughter, adapting the house, buying expensive equipment, paying for treatments that cost a fortune, all under the guidance of Derek, who presented himself as a caring and dedicated boyfriend. "And why did you decide to tell me this today?" Tyler wiped his nose with the sleeve of his beige t-shirt. "Because last night I heard them fighting. Derek was yelling at her, saying that if she told anyone anything, he would leave and she would be alone forever. He said no one would want a fake woman like her. She cried a lot, Mr. Thompson. She really cried a lot." David tried to process the information, but his mind seemed to work in slow motion. If Tyler was telling the truth, it meant Emily had been the victim of terrible manipulation. More than that, it meant he, as a father, had completely failed to protect his only daughter. "Tyler, I need you to tell me everything, every detail you remember. Can we go to my house?" "I can't, Mr. Thompson. If Derek sees me talking to you, he'll get suspicious. He always keeps an eye on who comes and goes from your house. I've noticed he even notes down when the mailman comes by." This information made David shudder. Derek really did have that strange habit of always knowing who visited the family, always making excuses to be present for all important conversations. When questioned about it, he said it was just extreme care for Emily's safety. "Then let's talk right here. Tell me everything from the beginning." Tyler looked around once more before sitting on a nearby bench. David settled beside the boy, trying to control the anxiety growing in his chest with each passing second. "Remember when Emily started using the wheelchair? It was well after she met Derek, right? At first I thought it was strange because she didn't seem sick. She kept going up and down the stairs at home normally when he wasn't around." David remembered that period perfectly. Emily had met Derek at a company event where the guy worked as a freelance financial consultant. They started dating, and a few months later came the news of the supposed accident. "What kind of accident was it again, Tyler? Do you remember?" "Derek said she fell down the stairs at home, but I didn't see any ambulance. And another strange thing, on the day she supposedly fell, I saw her going out for a run in the park early in the morning. She came back walking normally, took a shower, had breakfast. It was only when Derek arrived in the afternoon that she appeared in the wheelchair." Dear listener, If you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. David's heart was beating so hard he could hear the pounding in his own ears. The memories of that day came back with disturbing clarity. Derek had called in a panic, saying Emily had suffered a serious accident and that he was taking her to the hospital. When David arrived at the medical facility, he found his daughter already admitted, semi-conscious because of pain medication. "Tyler, you said you see Emily walking when Derek isn't around. How often does that happen?" "Almost every day, Mr. Thompson, especially early in the morning and late in the afternoon. She waters the plants, plays with the dogs, sometimes even climbs the tree to pick fruit. But she always keeps an eye on the gate, as if she's afraid of someone arriving." David remembered all the times he had arrived home unexpectedly and found Emily in the wheelchair, always with a startled expression on her face. He had always attributed that reaction to the natural surprise of someone not expecting a visitor, but now everything was beginning to make a frightening sense. "And the doctors? Do you know anything about the doctors she sees?" Tyler shook his head. "I don't know much about that. But once I heard Derek talking on the phone with someone, arranging a meeting at Dr. So-and-so's office, except I later found out they didn't go to any office. They went to the mall and stayed there all afternoon." The revelation was like a punch to David's gut. He himself had paid for expensive consultations with renowned specialists, always chosen by his son-in-law. Complex medical reports that arrived at home with stamps from famous clinics, but which Emily always seemed confused to explain. "Tyler, I'm going to ask you a very important question, and I need you to be totally honest with me. Have you ever heard Derek threatening Emily in any way?" The boy was silent for a few seconds, as if deciding whether or not to share heavier information. "Mr. Thompson, I didn't want to tell this because I'm afraid of what might happen to me and my family. But yes, I've heard Derek say very ugly things to Emily many times." "What kind of things?" "He says that if she tells anyone about something I don't really understand, no one will like her anymore. That she'll be alone and abandoned, that you yourself will be ashamed of her, and there are times he yells so much that the dogs get scared." David felt a rage growing inside his chest, but he tried to stay calm so as not to frighten the boy. "Tyler, you're a very brave boy for telling me this, but now I need to know, do you have any proof of what you're saying? Anything I can see with my own eyes?" The boy hesitated again. I took some pictures with my mom's phone, but promise you won't tell anyone it was me who took them." "I promise, Tyler. Can you show me?" Tyler pulled a simple cell phone from his pocket and showed several pictures taken from a distance, through his bedroom window. In the images, you could clearly see Emily running in the backyard, climbing on chairs, playing with the family dogs. In one of the photos, she appeared dancing alone near the pool, with an expression of joy that David hadn't seen on his daughter's face in a long time. "My God," murmured David, running his hands through his graying hair. "How could I have been so blind?" "You couldn't have known, Mr. Thompson. Derek is very clever. He can fool everyone. My mom always says he's an exemplary son-in-law, always so dedicated to Emily." David thought of all the praise Derek received from friends and acquaintances. The young man had really built an impeccable image of a dedicated and protective boyfriend, always present at medical appointments, always informed about every detail of the treatment, always willing to help with any need. "Tyler, I need to think about how to handle this situation. It's very complex and delicate. Can you do me a favor?" "Of course, Mr. Thompson." "Keep observing, but be very careful not to get caught. And if you hear or see anything very urgent, come find me immediately. Here's my card with my personal phone number." Tyler put the card in his jeans pocket. "Mr. Thompson, what are you going to do?" "First, I'm going to talk to some friends who understand these matters. Then, I'm going to try to get closer to Emily without arousing Derek's suspicions. I need to regain her trust so she feels safe to tell me the truth. And if she doesn't tell," David sighed deeply, "then I'll have to find other ways to discover what's really happening. But one thing you can be sure of, I won't give up on my daughter." The two sat in silence for a few minutes, watching other families strolling through the park. David tried to process all the information he had received while mentally planning his next steps. "Mr. Thompson, can I ask a question?" "Of course, Tyler. Why do you think Derek would do something like this? What would be the motive?" It was a question David was also asking himself. Derek had never shown interest in the family's money, never asked for significant loans or financial favors. On the contrary, he always appeared independent and proud of his own career. "I don't know yet, Tyler, but I will find out." The boy got up from the bench. "I need to go. If I take too long, my mum will get worried. But if anything happens, you come find me, okay?" "Thank you, Tyler. You saved Emily's life today. I'll never forget your courage." David was left alone on the bench, watching Tyler disappear among the trees of the park. His hands trembled slightly as he tried to organize his thoughts. If the boy was right, it meant Emily had been a victim of psychological manipulation for 2 whole years. He took out his phone and dialed the number of his personal lawyer, Mitchell, who was also a longtime friend. "David, what a surprise. How are you?" "Mitchell, I need to talk to you urgently. It's about Emily. Can it be now?" "Of course, I'm at the office. Did something serious happen?" "Very serious. I'm on my way." David walked quickly to the parking lot, his mind buzzing with unanswered questions. On the way to the law office, he mentally reviewed every interaction with Derek over the past 2 years, searching for signs that could confirm the boy Tyler's suspicions. Mitchell's office was in the downtown business district, in an elegant building David knew well. The two had built a solid friendship over more than 20 years of professional partnership. "David, you look awful." "What happened?" Mitchell asked, as soon as his friend entered his office. "I need you to listen to me very carefully. What I'm about to tell you may sound absurd, but I have reason to believe it's true." David recounted the entire conversation with Tyler, showed the photos the boy had taken, and shared his own suspicions about Derek's behavior. Mitchell listened in silence, making occasional notes on a notepad. "David, this is very serious. If it's true, we're talking about psychological abuse, fraud, and possibly other crimes we haven't even imagined yet. What do you think I should do?" "First, we need more evidence. The boy's photos are a start, but they're not enough for a formal accusation. Second, you need to try to get closer to Emily very carefully. If she really is being manipulated, any wrong move could make Derek tighten his control over her." David nodded in agreement. "Do you know any trustworthy private investigators?" "Yes, I do. I'll give you Patrick Harris's contact. He's discreet and efficient. You can start with a basic investigation on Derek. Professional background, past relationships, actual financial situation." "And what about Emily? How should I approach the subject with her?" Mitchell thought for a few seconds. "Go very carefully. If she really has been manipulated for 2 years, her mind might be completely confused about what is real and what isn't. Try to regain her trust gradually, without mentioning your suspicions directly." David noted the investigator's phone number in his own cell phone. "Mitchell, I'm very afraid. If this is true, I've completely failed as a father. How did I not notice that my own daughter was being psychologically tortured inside my home?" "David, don't blame yourself yet. Manipulators are extremely skilled at what they do. They can fool even experienced professionals. The important thing now is to act smartly to help Emily." The two talked for another hour, outlining an initial strategy. David would leave the office and call the investigator immediately. He would also try to arrange a dinner at home for the weekend, creating opportunities to better observe the interaction between Emily and Derek. "One last thing, David," said Mitchell, as his friend was already saying goodbye. "Keep everything absolutely confidential. If Derek finds out you're investigating, he could make Emily disappear or create an even more complex situation." David nodded and left the office with a mix of determination and anxiety. In the parking lot, he immediately called the investigator, Patrick Harris. "Patrick, this is David Thompson. Mitchell gave me your contact. I need to hire your services for a very delicate case." "Good afternoon, Mr. Thompson. Go ahead." "I'd rather talk in person. Can it be today?" "Yes, I can. I'm free in an hour." "Shall we meet at my office?" David noted the address and drove there. Patrick's office was simple but well organized. The investigator, a man of approximately 40 with a well-trimmed beard and an attentive gaze, listened to the whole story without interruptions. "Mr. Thompson, cases of psychological manipulation are more common than people think, and they are usually much more complex than they appear on the surface." "What do you mean?" "I mean, if Derek is really doing this to your daughter, it's probably not the first time. Manipulators at this level usually have a history. I'll start by investigating his past, where he lived before, previous relationships, family, education, work. How long could that take? For basic information, about 3 days. For a complete report, a week. And the cost? Let's talk about that later. First, let me understand the situation better. You said your daughter has been using the wheelchair for 2 years, correct?" "Correct. And in all this time, how many different doctors has she seen?" David thought for a few seconds. "Actually, it's always been the same 2 or 3 doctors. Derek insisted that trustworthy specialists were few and that it was better to keep follow-ups with the same professionals." "Names of these doctors?" David provided the names he could remember, along with the names of the clinics. "I'll check if these doctors and clinics actually exist, and if they are qualified as Derek claims." "Do you think there could be fake medical reports?" "It's possible. Forgery of medical documents isn't as rare as it should be, especially when there's financial interest involved." David's eyes widened. "Financial interest? But Derek never asked for money directly." "Mr. Thompson, in the last 2 years, how much have you spent on treatments, equipment, home adaptations, medications?" David did a quick mental calculation and was startled by the result. "About $200,000. "And who chose the suppliers? Who indicated where to buy the expensive equipment? Who recommended the labs for tests?" "Derek. Always Derek. He said he knew the best places because of his experience with other similar cases." Patrick noted this information. "I'll investigate if Derek has a business stake or receives commissions from any of these suppliers. It's a criminal practice, but it happens." David felt his stomach churn with each new possibility raised by the investigator. "Patrick, I need to know, is my daughter in physical danger? From what you've told me so far, there doesn't seem to be a risk of immediate physical violence, but prolonged psychological manipulation can cause serious mental harm. The sooner we resolve this, the better for her." "What do you need from me to start?" "All the information you have about Derek, full name, social security number, addresses where he's lived, phone numbers, email where he works, names of friends or relatives you know. I also need copies of the medical reports and receipts for the equipment purchased." David promised to gather everything and send it the next day. "One last question, Mr. Thompson. Does your daughter have free access to her own money, credit cards, bank account?" "No." Since the supposed accident, Derek took over managing her finances. He said it would be better to avoid additional stress during treatment. I thought it made sense. "I understand. That will also be investigated." David left the investigator's office with the feeling that he was finally taking the right steps, but also with a heavy heart at the possibility of having been deceived for so long. On the way back home, he stopped at a diner for a coffee to organize his thoughts. His phone rang with a message from Derek. "Hi, Mr. Thompson. Emily is having some pain today. We might need to take her for an extra appointment tomorrow. Can you cover the cost? It's about $800. David stared at the message for several minutes. Before the conversation with Tyler, he would have transferred the money immediately without question. Now every request from Derek would be viewed with suspicion. He replied, "Of course, Derek, but what kind of pain? Do you want me to come along to the appointment?" The reply came quickly. "No need to worry. They're the normal pains from the treatment, and it's better not to go to the appointment because the doctor said that too many unfamiliar people in the office make Emily anxious." David realized this was always the excuse. Emily would get anxious, stressed, or confused when there were more people present at the appointments. That's why only Derek accompanied her to the doctor's. He decided to test his son-in-law. "All right, but what's the doctor's name?" "I'd like to look him up online." This time the reply took over 10 minutes. "It's Dr. Richard Anderson, but he doesn't have a website or anything. He's a bit old-fashioned about these internet things. He only works through referrals. David immediately wrote down the name to give to the investigator. A specialist doctor with no online presence in the 21st century was, at the very least, suspicious. When he got home, he found Emily alone in the living room, watching television in her wheelchair. She smiled when she saw him, but David noticed the smile seemed forced. "Hi, Dad. How was your Sunday?" "It was good, honey. And yours? Where's Derek?" "He went out to take care of some things. He always handles everything for me, you know. He said he'll be back soon." David approached and sat on the sofa next to his daughter. "Emily, can I ask you a question?" "Of course, Dad." "Are you happy?" The question seemed to catch Emily completely off guard. She was silent for a few seconds, as if she didn't know how to answer. "What do you mean, Dad? Happy with life, with the relationship, with the treatment? Sometimes I get the impression you're always worried or sad." Emily looked away. "Oh, Dad, it's just that it's hard, you know. This whole situation with my health makes everyone a bit stressed, but Derek takes very good care of me. I'm lucky to have him." David noticed she hadn't answered whether she was happy. Instead, she talked about how Derek took care of her. "And your friends? I miss seeing Jessica and Ashley here at the house." Emily's expression changed visibly. "Oh, it's just that they feel a bit awkward about my situation. And Derek thinks too many visitors tire me out. It's better this way." At that moment, David heard the key turning in the door lock. Derek had arrived, and the change in Emily's posture was immediate. She straightened up in the chair, forced a wider smile, and seemed to have become alert. "Hi, honey," said Derek as he entered the room, greeting Emily with a kiss on the forehead. "Hi, Mr. Thompson. Everything okay?" "Everything's great, Derek. I was just here talking with Emily." David noticed Derek quickly glanced from one to the other, as if trying to assess what they had talked about. "That's good. Emily, how are the pains?" "A little better," Emily replied quickly. "Great. I scheduled the appointment for tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon. Your father already confirmed he'll cover the cost." David nodded but decided to press a little. "Derek, these medical expenses are getting quite high. Don't you think we should get a second opinion, or maybe a doctor from the insurance plan?" Derek kept smiling, but David noticed a slight tension in his expression. "Mr. Thompson, we've already talked about this. The doctors from the plan don't specialize in Emily's specific problem. Dr. Anderson is one of the few in the United States who understands this type of neurological injury." "Neurological injury? I thought it was a spinal problem." There were a few seconds of silence. David noticed Emily looked confused. It's neurological that affects the spine," Derek said quickly. "It's complex stuff, you know, Mr. Thompson. That's why it really needs a specialist." David decided not to push further at that moment, but mentally noted another inconsistency in Derek's version. "Well, I'll let you two rest. Emily, if you need anything, just call." "Thanks, Dad." David headed to his room, but before closing the door, he heard Derek asking Emily, in a low but still audible voice, "What did your father want to know?" "Nothing much. He just asked if I was happy." "And what did you say?" "That I was, of course. Said you take good care of me." "Very good. Remember we talked about this, right? Your dad sometimes asks strange questions because he's worried. But if you tell him too much, he might think I'm not taking good care of you." David felt his blood run cold. Derek was literally instructing Emily on what to say to her own father. That night, David had a very hard time sleeping. Tyler's words echoed in his mind, mixed with the inconsistencies in Derek's story and Emily's strange behavior. On Monday morning, he called the investigator Patrick before even leaving for work. "Patrick, I need to speed up the investigation. Last night I found out more suspicious things." David told him about the inconsistencies in the diagnosis and about the conversation he overheard between Derek and Emily. "Mr. Thompson, this confirms the pattern of manipulation. I'll prioritize verifying the doctors and clinics. If we find out they're fake, we'll have evidence of a crime." "How long?" "Give me until Wednesday. I'll work on this with top priority." David spent the next few days trying to maintain a normal routine, but observing every detail of Derek and Emily's behavior. During family meals, He noticed how his son-in-law always controlled the conversations, steering the topics and interrupting whenever Emily started talking about anything more personal. On Tuesday, he came home early and found Emily alone again. This time she was in the kitchen, apparently preparing a snack. David noticed she had stretched to reach a jar on the high shelf, something that would be impossible if she really had motor limitations. "Hi, honey. Need some help?" Emily quickly sat back down in the wheelchair with a startled expression. "Hi, Dad. No, it's okay. I was just trying to see if I could reach a few things. Derek says it's important for me to try to do simple exercises." "I see. And where is he?" "He went to work. He won't be back until tonight." David decided to take advantage of the opportunity. Can I ask you a more serious question?" "Of course, Dad. Do you remember exactly how the accident that left you like this happened?" The question clearly made Emily uncomfortable. She began nervously fidgeting with her hands. "Dad, you know I don't like talking about that. It makes me sad." "I know, honey, but sometimes I think it would be good for us to talk more. I feel a bit left out of the whole situation. Derek always takes care of everything, and I'm not part of anything. But Daddy, you help so much. You pay for all the treatments. You adapted the whole house for me. I'm so grateful for that." David moved closer and took his daughter's hand. I just want you to know you can talk to me about anything. Anything at all. I'm your father and I love you more than anything in this world." Emily began to cry softly. "I know, Daddy, I love you too." "Then tell me one thing. Are you really happy?" This time, Emily took a long time to answer. Her tears intensified. "Dad, happiness is kind of complicated, isn't it? After you get sick, things change a lot. But Derek always says I need to be grateful for what I have and not keep thinking about what I've lost." David realized she was repeating words she probably heard often from Derek. "But what about you? What do you think? Not what Derek thinks, but what Emily thinks." The question seemed to confuse the young woman. She stared at the floor for a long time. "Dad, sometimes I get confused about what I think. Derek says that's normal because of the medications and the situation, that it's better not to overanalyze things." "What medications are you taking, Em?" "Pain meds, anxiety meds, sleeping pills. Derek organizes it all perfectly for me." David Thompson was alarmed. Emily was being medicated with anti-anxiety drugs and sedatives, which would explain the mental confusion and difficulty questioning her own situation. "Sweetheart, would you like to take a trip with me?" "Just the two of us, father and daughter." Emily's eyes lit up for a moment, but soon her expression became worried. "Oh, Dad, I don't know if I can travel. Derek always says that changes in environment can harm my treatment. But what if it was something quick, a weekend at the beach, for example? I need to ask him. He understands these medical things better." David felt his heart tighten as he realized how his daughter had completely lost the autonomy to make any decisions about her own life. At that moment, Emily's phone rang. It was Derek. "Hi, honey. Everything's fine. My dad is here. No, we were just talking. Okay, love you too." After hanging up, Emily turned to David. "Dad, Derek is going to arrive a little earlier today. I think we'd better finish talking later." "Why, sweetheart?" "Oh, he gets worried when I talk too much. Says it makes me agitated and can interfere with the treatment." David left the kitchen with a heavy heart, but also more determined than ever to uncover the whole truth. On Wednesday morning, Patrick called with the first findings of the investigation. "Mr. Thompson, I need to see you urgently. I've discovered some very serious things." "Can you talk over the phone?" "I'd prefer in person. This is sensitive information." They arranged to meet at the investigator's office during lunch hour. David arrived promptly at noon. "Mr. Thompson, your suspicions have been confirmed. Dr. Richard Anderson does not exist. The advanced neurology clinic where your daughter supposedly receives treatment also does not exist." David felt his legs go weak. "What do you mean they don't exist?" "Complete forgery. The stamps on the medical reports are fake. The clinic's EINs are non-existent. Your son-in-law created an entire structure to deceive you." "My God. And the money. Where is it going?" I'm investigating that now, but I can tell you that Derek is not a financial consultant as he claims. In fact, he's had 3 jobs in the last year, all ended due to disciplinary problems. What kind of problems? Accusations of workplace harassment, manipulation of colleagues, creating conflict in the work environment, a very clear pattern of abusive behavior. David sat down heavily in the chair. Patrick, is there anything else? Yes, there is, and it's the most serious part. Derek has been married twice before. Both ex-wives filed for protective orders due to psychological abuse. One of them was admitted to a psychiatric clinic after the divorce. Are they willing to talk? One of them agreed to speak with me on the phone. The stories are frighteningly similar to what's happening with your daughter. David asked for all the details, and Patrick recounted that Derek's ex-wives had gone through similar processes of social isolation, financial control, and psychological manipulation. The first ex-wife, Rachel, said he convinced her she had a rare disease and that only he could care for her properly. For 3 years she lived in a wheelchair unnecessarily. And how did she discover the truth? Her family hired a private investigator just like you are doing. When confronted with the evidence, she initially denied everything. It took months of therapy for her to accept she had been manipulated. David was stunned. And the second wife? Similar case, but this time he convinced her she had serious heart problems. She spent years taking unnecessary medication that left her debilitated and confused. Patrick, I need to get my daughter out of this situation immediately. Calm down, Mr. Thompson. We need to proceed very carefully. If Derek feels threatened, he might intensify the manipulation or even harm your daughter. What kind of harm? Increasing medication dosages, isolating her completely, or even convincing her to cut ties with you for good. David ran his hands through his hair, desperate. So what should I do? First, we'll gather all possible evidence. Then, we'll prepare a careful intervention with help from professionals specialized in psychological manipulation. Do you know such professionals? I know a psychologist, Dr. Catherine Miller, who specifically works with victims of psychological abuse. She can guide us on the best way to approach your daughter. David noted down the psychologist's contact. Patrick, how much time do we have? Hard to say, but from experience with previous cases, Derek usually abandons the victim when he realizes he's being investigated. The problem is he can cause a lot of psychological damage before he leaves. David left the meeting even more worried than before. He now knew his daughter was the victim of a criminal with a history of similar cases. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. For the rest of the week, David tried to maintain normalcy at home, but every interaction with Derek left him more tense. His son-in-law continued his routine of absolute control over Emily, choosing her clothes, medications, food, and activities. On Saturday, David decided to take more direct action. He seized a moment when Derek had gone out to buy medicine and invited Emily for a walk in the garden. Sweetheart, how about we get some sun outside? Oh, Dad, Tyler said it would be better for me to rest today. The pains are stronger. But a little sun could be good, don't you think? Emily seemed to hesitate as if fighting an internal battle. Okay, but only for a few minutes. David accompanied her to the garden, pushing the wheelchair. When they neared the pool, he stopped and crouched beside his daughter. Can I tell you a secret? Of course, Dad. Sometimes I get the impression that you're not really sick. Emily's face immediately paled. Dad, how can you say such a thing? Tyler always says this distrust from people is one of the worst parts of my illness. Sweetheart, what if Tyler is wrong? What if you could walk normally? Emily began to cry and asked to go back inside the house. Dad, please don't talk about these things. Tyler will be angry if he knows we talked about this. Why are you afraid of Tyler getting angry? The question seemed to awaken something in the young woman. She stayed silent for a long time. I'm not afraid. It's just that he worries so much about me. And when I do things he doesn't approve of, he gets sad. I don't like making him sad. David realized Emily had been conditioned to interpret control as care and possessiveness as love. Sweetheart, Do you remember what your life was like before you met Tyler? It was different. Different how? I went out more, had more friends, but Tyler always says that was because I didn't know I was sick yet, that I was pushing my body beyond its limits. At that moment, they heard Tyler's car arriving in the garage. The change in Emily's posture was immediate and visible. Dad, please don't tell him we talked about this. He'll get very worried about me. It's okay, sweetheart, but I want you to know you can talk to me about anything, anytime. When Tyler entered the garden, he found the two of them in silence. David noticed how his son-in-law quickly scanned the scene, trying to interpret what had happened. Hey, how are you two doing? It was a beautiful afternoon to get some sun, wasn't it? Yes, Emily replied quickly. Dad suggested it, and I thought it was a good idea. That's great, sweetie. I brought your medications. It's time to take them. David noticed Derek was giving Emily a significant amount of pills, different colors and sizes. Derek, may I ask what medications these are? Of course, Mr. Thompson. This one is for pain, this one for anxiety, this one for muscle relaxation, and these two are special vitamins for her neurological condition. David discreetly made a mental note of the pills' descriptions to research later. And are they all prescribed by Dr. Richard? Yes, all of them. He adjusts the dosages according to the treatment's progress. That night, David researched online about the medications he had observed. He discovered that two of them were strong anti-anxiety drugs that could cause mental confusion and chemical dependency. The others were sedatives that caused drowsiness and disorientation. On Monday, he called the psychologist recommended by Patrick. Dr. Catherine, I really need your guidance. My daughter has been a victim of psychological manipulation for 2 years, and I don't know how to help her. Mr. Thompson, the investigator Patrick gave me some information about the case. Can you come to my office this afternoon? David arrived at Dr. Catherine's office at 3 in the afternoon. She was a woman of about 50 with a maternal air and a calming voice. Mr. Thompson, cases like this are more common than we imagine. The important thing is to understand that your daughter has been gradually conditioned to accept a false reality. How is that possible? Experienced manipulators use very sophisticated techniques: social isolation, information control, medications that cause mental confusion, alternating between excessive affection and subtle punishments. David told her all the details he had discovered in the last few weeks. Doctor, your daughter probably has a genuine fear of contradicting the manipulator. In her mind, he has become the only source of safety and affection. But how can I make her see the reality? With a lot of patience and care. Direct confrontations usually don't work. She needs to gradually rediscover her own capacity for perception and judgment. The psychologist suggested a careful plan. David should continue getting closer to Emily, regaining her trust, but without directly mentioning his suspicions about Derek. The initial goal is to reactivate her critical thinking. Ask questions that lead her to think about her own wants and needs, without mentioning the boyfriend. For example, ask about dreams she had before the illness, activities she used to enjoy, places she would like to visit. Help her reconnect with her own identity. David left the office with a clearer plan, but also with the awareness that it would be a long and delicate process. During the following weeks, he gradually implemented the strategies suggested by the psychologist. He started spending more time at home, creating opportunities to talk with Emily when Derek wasn't present. Em, do you remember what you wanted to be when you were a kid? I wanted to be a veterinarian. I loved animals. And do you still like animals? I do, but Derek says having pets at home would be complicated because of my condition. David mentally noted another limitation imposed by Derek. And if it were possible, would you like to go back to studying? Emily's eyes lit up for a moment. I would love to. I always wanted to take an animal behavior course. But it would be hard with all this, wouldn't it? Why would it be hard? Because of the wheelchair, the medications that make me confused sometimes, the constant doctor's appointments. David realized every aspect of Emily's life had been structured to prevent her independence. One day he arrived home and found Emily in the garden, secretly playing with a stray kitten that had appeared on the property. When she saw him, she quickly returned to the wheelchair. Dad, I was just giving it some food. Derek doesn't like it when I do that, but the little thing looked hungry. There's no problem at all in caring for animals, Em. Why doesn't Derek like it? He says I could catch diseases, that it's dangerous for someone in my condition. David knelt down to pet the kitten. And what do you think? I think there's no danger. I always cared for animals before I got sick. Then why not keep caring for them? Emily was confused by the question. Because Derek understands these medical things better. David realized that Emily had completely outsourced her judgment to Derek. Em, can I ask you a question? Do you trust what Derek says more, or what you yourself feel? The question visibly made the young woman uncomfortable. Dad, these questions confuse me. Derek always says that sick people like me shouldn't trust their own feelings too much because the illness affects judgment. David was beginning to understand the dimension of the psychological manipulation. Derek had convinced Emily that she couldn't trust herself. That night, he decided to take a riskier step. When Derek left for work, he called Emily to talk in the living room. Sweetheart, I'm going to tell you something that might seem strange, but I need you to listen to me carefully. What is it, Dad? For the last few months, I've been observing some things that have made me worried. Things about your medical treatment. Emily's face grew tense. What kind of things? For example, Dr. Richard that you see. I tried to look him up online and couldn't find any information. Dad, he himself said he doesn't like that internet stuff. He's a more traditional doctor. But nowadays, even traditional doctors have at least a record with the state medical board online. Maybe you didn't look properly. David noticed that Emily was defensive but continued carefully. Sweetheart, would you feel comfortable seeing a second doctor? Just for a second opinion? Derek always says that changes in treatment can be dangerous, that it's better to keep follow-ups with someone who already knows my case. But one consultation just for confirmation wouldn't change the treatment. Emily was silent for a long time. Dad, can I confess something to you? Of course, sweetheart. Sometimes I get confused about my own illness. I can't really understand what I have, what exactly the symptoms are, why I need so many different medications. David felt his heart race. It was the first time Emily had expressed any doubt. And when you ask Derek these things, he says it's normal for me to be confused, that it's part of the illness, that it's better not to think too much about these things because it could worsen my mental state. Em, can I ask you a very direct question? Go ahead. Do you remember exactly the moment you lost the movement in your legs? Emily was silent for several minutes, with a concentrated expression, as if trying to access distant memories. Dad, this is strange, but I can't remember clearly. I remember waking up in the hospital already in the wheelchair, but the details of the accident itself are kind of fuzzy in my head. And that doesn't bother you. It does bother me. But Derek and the doctors said it's normal to have confused memories after neurological trauma. David decided to take an even bolder step. Em, would you like to try to stand up? Just out of curiosity to see how it feels. Emily's face looked terrified. Dad, I can't. Derek always says that forcing movement can cause worse permanent damage. But what if it didn't? What if you could get up? No, Dad. Please don't ask me that. If Derek finds out I tried, he'll be very angry. And if I get hurt, I might never have another chance to get better. David realized the fear had been implanted so deeply that Emily didn't even consider the possibility of testing her physical capabilities. It's okay, sweetheart. We won't try anything that makes you uncomfortable. But then he had an idea. Em, would you mind if I recorded a video of us talking? Sometimes I'm afraid I'll forget our conversations, and I'd like to have a keepsake. Emily agreed, and David recorded a 10-minute conversation where she expressed her confusion about her own illness and her doubts about the treatment. The next morning, he showed the video to Dr. Catherine. Mr. Thompson, this is very important. Your daughter is beginning to question the narrative that's been imposed on her. It's a sign the manipulation is losing its grip. What should I do now? Keep creating these opportunities for reflection and start introducing factual information very subtly. How so? Show her articles about medicine, documentaries about neurology, anything that can expand her knowledge about her own medical condition. David spent the following days gathering educational material about real neurological injuries, conventional treatments, and patient rights. I found an interesting documentary about people who overcame neurological problems. Want to watch it with me? I can, but are you sure it won't make me more confused? On the contrary, I think it might clarify some things. They watched a documentary about neurological rehabilitation together. David noticed Emily became very interested, asking several questions about the treatments shown. Dad, the treatments they show here are very different from what I do. Different how? They do intensive physical therapy, strengthening exercises, constant attempts at movement. I don't do any of that. And why do you think you don't? Derek always said my case is very specific and that this kind of physical therapy could be harmful. David felt they were reaching a crucial moment. Would you like to talk to a physical therapist, just to understand your case better? Would Derek allow it? Sweetheart, you're an adult. You don't need his permission to seek information about your own health. That statement seemed to shock Emily. Dad, I forgot I can make decisions on my own about some things. David realized he had touched on a fundamental point. Emily had completely lost her sense of personal autonomy. Of course you can, sweetheart. You always can. That afternoon, David called Patrick for a report on the investigation's progress. Mr. Thompson, we've uncovered more serious information. Derek is running the same scam on at least 2 other families simultaneously. How so? He maintains parallel relationships. A 25-year-old woman in Atlanta and another 28-year-old in Charlotte. Both also believe they have serious health problems. David was stunned. But that means... It means your daughter is just one of the victims of a much larger scheme. Derek is a professional criminal. Patrick, I need to protect my daughter immediately. Calm down, Dr. Thompson. If we act rashly, we could lose important evidence, and Derek could disappear before we can hold him criminally accountable. Then what do you suggest? That we continue with Dr. Catherine's plan. Your daughter is already starting to question the situation. Let's intensify that process until she's ready to accept the truth. And how long could that take? A few more weeks at most. Cases like this have a breaking point. When the victim starts questioning, it usually progresses quickly. David hung up the phone with mixed feelings. On one hand, he was eager to get Emily out of the manipulative situation. On the other, he understood that rushing could harm the process. In the following days, he intensified his conversations with his daughter, always when Derek wasn't present. I've been thinking a lot about your doubts regarding your treatment. How about we talk to a different doctor, just to clarify some questions? This time, Emily didn't refuse immediately. Dad, I want to understand better what's happening to me. Sometimes I feel like I know nothing about my own illness. That's great, honey. Can I schedule an appointment for this week? But what about Derek? He won't like it. You don't have to tell him. It can be something just between the two of us. The idea of doing something without Derek knowing clearly made Emily nervous, but it also seemed to awaken a long-dormant curiosity. Okay, Dad, but with a doctor from the insurance plan, right? I don't want you spending more money on my problems. David scheduled an appointment with a renowned neurologist from the family's insurance plan. During the 2 days leading up to the appointment, he observed Emily visibly anxious. Are you okay? You seem worried. Dad, I'm afraid the doctor will say my condition has worsened, or that Derek finds out and gets mad at me. Honey, why are you so afraid of Derek's reaction? The question seemed to spark deep reflection in the young woman. I don't know how to explain it. I think it's because he's been taking care of me for so long. I'm afraid of disappointing him. Healthy relationships aren't based on fear. They're based on love and mutual respect. But Dad, Derek loves me. He always says that. And do you love him? Emily remained silent for a long time. Dad, I don't know what I feel anymore. Sometimes I'm confused about my own feelings. David realized this was an important opening. And why do you think you're confused? Maybe it's because of the medications or the illness. Derek always says people in my condition become emotionally unstable. Have you ever tried going a whole day without taking the medications, just to see how you feel? No. Derek says that could be dangerous, that I could have seizures or worse. David mentally noted that he would need to address the medication issue with the neurologist. On the day of the appointment, David took Emily to the office of Dr. Stephen Walker, a neurologist with over 20 years of experience. Good afternoon, Emily. Your father told me a bit about your case. Can you tell me about your symptoms? Emily began repeating the description she always gave, but Dr. Stephen interrupted her with specific questions she couldn't answer. Emily, do you remember having any recent imaging tests? MRI, CT scan? I think so. Derek always arranges those tests. Do you have copies of the results? I don't have them with me. Dr. Stephen asked to physically examine Emily. During the exam, he tested reflexes, muscle strength, and sensitivity in her legs. Emily, your reflexes are completely normal. Your musculature also seems to be in good shape. But doctor, I can't walk. Have you tried? Derek always said it would be dangerous to try. Dr. Stephen exchanged a meaningful look with David. Emily, with your permission, I'd like to try some simple exercises. Nothing that could cause any harm. I'm scared. That's understandable. But they're very basic movements just to test your muscle response. Very carefully, Dr. Stephen helped Emily try to move her legs. To her own surprise, the movements were completely normal. Doctor, I'm able to move my legs. Yes, Emily. Your movements are perfectly normal. Emily began to cry. But how can that be? I haven't walked in 2 years. Emily, from a neurological standpoint, you have no physical limitations. Your physical exams are completely normal. Then why couldn't I walk before? Dr. Stephen chose his words carefully. There are several possibilities. One is what we call conversion disorder, where emotional problems manifest as physical symptoms. Another possibility is that you were led to believe you couldn't walk when you actually always could. Emily looked at her father with a look of total confusion. Dad, I don't understand any of this. David approached and held his daughter's hand. The doctor is saying that, physically, you've always been able to walk. The problem might be somewhere else. Where? In your head. Or in whoever convinced you that you couldn't walk. Emily was silent for several minutes, processing the information. Doctor, does that mean I can try to stand up? Absolutely, very carefully, but yes. With help from the doctor and her father, Emily slowly rose from the wheelchair. Her legs trembled not from physical limitation, but from anxiety and 2 years of disuse. Dad, I'm standing, she said, beginning to cry. Yes, honey. You always could be. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing, Dr. Stephen suggested some simple steps. Emily managed to walk around the office room, supported by her father and the doctor. Doctor, why couldn't I do this at home? Emily, your mind had been conditioned to believe you couldn't walk. That conviction was so strong that your body obeyed the imaginary limitation. But who would do something like that to me? David and Dr. Stephen exchanged looks again. Honey, that's a conversation we need to have calmly, at home. During the drive back, Emily was mostly silent, occasionally commenting on how strange it felt to have her legs working normally. Dad, I'm scared. Scared of what, honey? Scared of telling Derek that I was able to walk at the appointment. He's going to be very angry. Why would Derek be angry about good news? The question made Emily stop and think. That's true. He should be happy, right? So why am I so afraid of his reaction? That is a very important question, honey. What do you think? Dad, I think I need to rethink a lot of things about my relationship with Derek. When they got home, Derek hadn't arrived from work yet. David took the opportunity to talk more deeply with Emily. Now that you know you can walk, how do you feel? Confused, relieved, but also angry. Angry at what? Angry at having lost 2 years of my life believing a lie. David realized Emily was beginning to process the reality of the situation. Honey, are you ready to hear some hard truths about Derek? Emily took a deep breath. I think so, Dad. David carefully told her about the investigation, the discoveries about the fake doctors, the other victims, and Derek's pattern of manipulative behavior. Dad, are you saying Derek lied about everything? That he made me believe I was disabled to control me? That's exactly right, honey. Emily was silent for a long time, processing all the information. Dad, I feel so stupid. How could I believe these lies for so long? You're not stupid. You were the victim of an experienced manipulator. He used very sophisticated psychological techniques to control you. But Dad, some things don't make sense. Why couldn't I actually walk at home? Because your mind had been conditioned to believe you couldn't. Also, the medications he was giving you probably caused mental confusion and physical weakness. Emily picked up the medication bottle on the table. These pills, they weren't for my imaginary illness. Probably not. It was a way to keep you debilitated and confused. The young woman angrily threw the bottle in the trash. Dad, I want to confront Derek when he gets here. I think it's better not to. He could become aggressive or try to manipulate you even more intensely. Then what are we going to do? We'll follow the plan I outlined with the professionals who helped me. I'm going to ask Derek to leave the house, and then we'll focus on your emotional recovery. And if he refuses to leave? In that case, we'll have to take legal measures. When Derek got home that night, he found David and Emily talking in the living room. Emily was out of the wheelchair, sitting normally on the sofa. Hey, Em, why aren't you in the chair? David noticed that Derek immediately became tense upon seeing the scene. Derek, we need to talk, said David. Talk about what, father-in-law? About the truth. About what you've been doing to my daughter these past 2 years. Derek's expression changed completely. The mask of the caring son-in-law fell away, revealing a cold and calculating look. I don't know what you're talking about. Derek, I know about the fake doctors. I know about the other victims. I know about your whole manipulation scheme. Derek looked at Emily, who was clearly nervous but determined. Em, have you been telling your father things? After all, we talked about keeping our private matters private. Derek, I found out I can walk. I saw a real doctor today. Em, you could have hurt yourself. Why didn't you tell me first? Because I didn't need your permission, replied Emily, with a firmness that surprised even herself. Derek changed tactics, resorting to emotional manipulation. Em, honey, you're confused because of the medications. Your father is filling your head with wrong ideas. You know I love you and only want to take care of you. If you love me, why did you make me believe I was disabled when I'm not? Honey, you're mixing things up. You have a complex medical condition. Just because you managed to walk today doesn't mean you're cured, David intervened. Derek, enough lies. We know everything. Dr. Richard doesn't exist. The clinics are fake. The reports are forged. Derek realized he'd been found out and completely changed his demeanor. Fine. You want the truth? The truth is I saved Em from a mediocre life. For 2 years she had someone who took care of everything for her. She never had to worry about responsibilities, tough decisions, frustrations. You stole 2 years of her life, said David with contained anger. I gave 2 years of comprehensive care. How many boyfriends would do that? Emily stood up from the sofa, still trembling but determined. Derek, you stole my freedom, my friends. My life. That's not love. That's prison. You're being influenced by your father. Tomorrow you'll regret treating me like this. No, Derek, I'm finally thinking clearly for the first time in 2 years. David stepped closer to Derek. I want you to leave my house now, and I don't want you near my daughter anymore. And if I refuse, then I'll have to call the proper authorities. I have enough evidence for criminal proceedings. Derek realized there was no way left to turn the situation around. His manipulation had completely lost its effect. All right, but you'll regret this. Em can't live on her own. In a week, she'll be begging me to come back. We'll see about that, replied David. Derek went upstairs to the bedroom and quickly packed his bags. Before leaving, he tried one more time to talk to Emily. Em, last chance. Come with me and we'll continue our life together, far away from all this mess. Derek, I don't want to live the lie you created anymore. I want to rebuild my true life. You'll regret this. Without me, you're nothing. We'll see about that, replied Emily with a determination she hadn't shown in years. Derek left the house, slamming the door. David and Emily were left alone, embracing in the middle of the living room. Dad, I did it. Did what, honey? I managed to be brave. For the first time in 2 years, I made a decision on my own. And how do you feel? Scared, but also relieved, like I've woken up from a nightmare. In the following weeks, Emily went through an intense process of emotional rehabilitation with Dr. Catherine. The therapy sessions gradually revealed the full extent of the psychological manipulation she had suffered. Doctor, sometimes I still feel like calling Derek and apologizing. That's normal, Emily. Your brain was conditioned for 2 years to seek his approval. It will take time to break that pattern. But I know he hurt me. Why do I still miss him sometimes? Because he alternated between moments of excessive affection and subtle punishments. That pattern creates a kind of emotional dependency similar to drug addiction. David participated in some sessions, learning how to better support his daughter during the recovery process. Mr. Thompson, your role now is to help Emily rediscover her own identity. For 2 years, she lived being who Derek wanted her to be. How can I do that? Encourage her to make small decisions on her own, choosing her own clothes, the food she wants to eat, the shows she wants to watch. They're basic things, but fundamental for rebuilding autonomy. Emily began relearning simple activities. On the first day she left the house alone to buy something at the market, she called her father 3 times, asking for confirmation about her choices. Dad, can I buy this brand of shampoo? Or should I ask someone which one is better? Honey, you can choose any brand you want. It's your decision. It feels so strange to be able to choose by myself. Gradually, Emily regained confidence in her own decisions. She went back to studying, enrolling in an online animal behavior course, the dream she had abandoned when she started dating Derek. Dad, I got a 9 on the first test. Congratulations, honey. And how do you feel? Proud of myself. It had been so long since I felt that. David decided to sell the wheelchair and all the unnecessary medical equipment he had bought during the 2 years of manipulation. What do you want me to do with the money from the sale? Dad, can I suggest we donate it to an institution that helps people with real disabilities? I feel it's a way to make amends for having pretended something that other people actually live with. The suggestion showed how Emily was developing empathy and social awareness again. 3 months after Derek left, Tyler, the neighborhood boy who had warned David, showed up at the door. Mr. Thompson, how is Emily? Very well, Tyler. Do you want to talk to her? Emily came running down the stairs, something she hadn't done in 2 years, and hugged the boy. Tyler, you saved my life. If you hadn't told my dad the truth, I'd still be trapped in that lie. I knew something was wrong. I'm glad you're okay now. Tyler, can I ask you for something? Sure. If you ever see another person in a strange situation like mine, promise you'll tell someone. I promise. Meanwhile, Patrick continued investigating Derek. He discovered that Derek had disappeared from Washington, D.C., but was running similar scams in other cities. Mr. Thompson, we managed to locate Derek in Los Angeles. He is using a false identity and already has a new victim. What can we do? With the evidence we've gathered, we can file a formal complaint. The other previous victims have also agreed to testify. David agreed to sue Derek, not just for justice for his daughter, but to protect future victims. 6 months later, Emily was completely transformed. She had regained the weight lost during the years of unnecessary medication, reconnected with old friendships, and was working part-time at a veterinary clinic. Dad, sometimes I still can't believe I lived through all of that. And how do you feel about what you went through? Grateful. As strange as it sounds, grateful. Grateful. Grateful for discovering what I'm capable of. For 2 years, they convinced me I was weak and dependent. Now I know I'm strong and independent. And what about relationships? Do you feel like dating someone? Not yet. I want to get to know myself better first. Rediscover who I am when I'm not trying to please anyone. A year after the events, David and Emily decided to create a support group for victims of psychological manipulation. Em, are you sure you want to speak publicly about what you went through? Dad, if my story can help one person identify that they're being manipulated, it's worth it. The group's first meeting took place at David's house, with the participation of Dr. Catherine. 5 people attended, all with similar stories of manipulation and psychological abuse. My name is Emily, she introduced herself. For 2 years I believed I was physically disabled, because my boyfriend convinced me of it. Today I'm here to tell how I managed to free myself from that manipulation. The others listened attentively as Emily narrated her experience. At the end, a woman of about 60 years old spoke up. Emily, my story is different from yours, but very similar. My husband convinced me for 15 years that I had serious mental problems. I only discovered the truth when my daughter took me to an independent psychiatrist. And how do you feel now? Asked Emily. I'm still learning to trust myself, but every day it gets a little easier. David watched proudly as his daughter was using her negative experience to help others. 2 years after the discovery of the manipulation, Derek was finally arrested in Los Angeles. The criminal trial revealed that he had manipulated at least 8 women in different states, always using similar methods. Em, how do you feel knowing he was arrested? Relieved. Not for me, but for the future victims he won't be able to harm. Do you feel anger toward him? Not anymore. I feel pity. It must be sad to have a life based on deceiving and hurting other people. Her answer showed how Emily had developed a mature perspective on her traumatic experience. The support group grew and transformed into a small, non-governmental organization. David provided a room in his company for the activities, and Emily became the volunteer coordinator. Dad, we got a call today from a mother in Atlanta. Her daughter is in a situation similar to what I lived through. What will you do? We'll guide the family on how to proceed. And, if necessary, I can travel there and speak with the young woman in person. David smiled, noticing how his daughter had transformed from a victim into an advocate for other victims. 3 years after the events, Emily met Michael, a veterinarian who worked at the same clinic as her. The relationship developed slowly, based on mutual respect and independence. Em, how do you know this relationship is healthy? Because he encourages me to have my own opinions, my own dreams. He never tries to control me or isolate me from my friends and family. And how did he react when you told him your story? He was impressed by my strength to overcome all of that. He said he admires me even more for using the experience to help other people. Michael participated in some support group activities, learning about psychological manipulation to be able to identify the signs in other people. It's impressive how manipulators can deceive even intelligent people, he commented after one of the meetings. That's why it's important to talk about it, replied Emily. The more people know about these manipulation techniques, the fewer victims there will be. The support group launched an educational project, visiting schools and universities to talk about healthy relationships and psychological manipulation. Everyone. Emily addressed a class of university students. How many of you have heard of psychological manipulation in relationships? Only a few students raised their hands. Then you need to hear this information. Psychological manipulation can happen to anyone, at any age, regardless of intelligence or educational level. After one of the talks, a young student approached Emily. Emily, can I talk to you in private? Of course. I think my boyfriend might be manipulating me. He controls my clothes, my friends, and always makes me feel guilty when I question anything. Emily spent an hour talking with the young woman, helping her identify the signs of manipulation in her relationship. What should I do? Asked the student. First, talk to people you trust, family, close friends. Second, seek professional help. And third, remember, you have the right to question, to disagree, and to make your own decisions. Situations like this became frequent. Emily developed a special ability to identify victims of manipulation and offer appropriate support. David watched with pride as his daughter had transformed her traumatic experience into a life mission. Em, you've already helped dozens of people. How do you feel? I feel like I've found my purpose, Dad. Every person we manage to help validates all the suffering I went through. 5 years after the events, the support group had grown and become a regional reference. Emily was invited to speak at a national conference on psychological violence. My story proves that psychological manipulation can be extremely sophisticated, she said to an audience of 300 professionals. But it also proves that it's possible to break free and rebuild your life. After the lecture, several professionals approached to talk and exchange experiences. Emily, your presentation was very impactful, said a psychologist from Los Angeles. I would like to invite you to participate in a national project to combat psychological violence. It would be an honor to participate. David watched the lecture from the back of the auditorium, moved to see how his daughter had become a strong and confident person. During dinner after the event, Emily reflected on her journey. Dad, if 5 years ago someone had told me I would be here, speaking to hundreds of people about my experience, I wouldn't have believed it. What changed? I learned that our worst experiences can become our greatest strengths. What Derek did to me was terrible, but it taught me about resilience, about the importance of truth, and about how fundamental it is to help other people. And your plans for the future? To continue this work. Michael and I are planning to get married next year, but he understands that helping victims of manipulation is a priority in my life. David smiled. And children? Are you thinking of having children? We are, yes, and if we do, we'll raise them to be critical thinkers, who question when something doesn't seem right, who never allow anyone to make them doubt their own perception of reality. A year later, David was walking with Emily through the same park where Tyler had approached him 6 years earlier. Sometimes I still think about how brave that boy was to tell me the truth. Tyler saved my life, Dad, literally. And how would you define your life today? Fulfilled. I have a job I love, a healthy relationship, a mission that motivates me every day. More importantly, I have autonomy over my own life. Any regrets? None, not even about the 2 lost years. They were necessary for me to become who I am today. David stopped near the bench where he had spoken with Tyler years ago. That boy seeing you playing in the garden and chasing the dogs was the first step toward your freedom. And his courage taught me that sometimes we need to be the voice that warns other people about dangerous situations even when it's hard. At that moment they saw Tyler passing through the park. He had grown up and was now 19, studying psychology at university. Tyler, Emily called. The young man approached with a smile. Emily, David, how are you? Very well, Emily replied. And you? How's college? Great. I'm interning at a clinic that treats victims of psychological abuse. You inspired me to choose this field. I'm so proud, said David. You planted a seed 6 years ago that grew into a tree that's still bearing fruit. Actually, said Tyler, I learned something very important from your situation. What? Asked Emily. That sometimes being brave means doing the right thing even when we're afraid, especially when we're afraid. The 3 of them talked for another hour, remembering the journey they had shared and celebrating the positive transformations it had brought about. When they said goodbye, David and Emily continued walking through the park. Dad, I have a confession to make. Go ahead, sweetheart. Sometimes I thank Derek in my thoughts. David was surprised. Thank him? I thank him for choosing a manipulation that could be discovered. If he had been more subtle, I might have lived my whole life as a victim without ever discovering the truth. Interesting perspective. And I'm thankful because the experience showed me what I'm capable of. I learned that I can overcome anything, that I can transform pain into purpose, and that I can use my scars to help other people heal theirs. David hugged his daughter. You've become an extraordinary woman. I learned from an extraordinary father, she replied, a father who never gave up on me, even when I had given up on myself. As they walked back home, David reflected on the entire journey, from a traumatic Sunday when a brave boy revealed a shocking truth, to a strong daughter who dedicated her life to helping others. If you could give one piece of advice to someone going through a situation similar to what you experienced, what would it be? I would say, trust your perception. If something feels off, it probably is. And always remember that you have the right to question, to doubt, and to seek second opinions about any aspect of your life. And for family members who suspect a loved one is being manipulated, don't give up. Be patient but persistent. Sometimes the victim will deny it, will defend the manipulator, might even temporarily pull away from the family. But true love and truth always win in the end. David smiled. And about future relationships? What advice would you give? A healthy relationship makes you feel stronger, more confident, more yourself. If a relationship makes you feel confused, insecure, or dependent, it's a red flag. When they arrived home, they found Michael waiting in the living room. He had prepared a special dinner. "What are we celebrating?" asked Emily. "Your father told me that today marks exactly 6 years since you discovered the truth about your situation. I thought it deserved a celebration." Emily looked at David and Michael, the two most important people in her life now. "Do you know what I'm most proud of in these 6 years?" "What?" they both asked. "Having learned the difference between loving and being truly loved, and being controlled and manipulated. You two love me in a way that sets me free to be who I am. Derek controlled me in a way that prevented me from being anything." During dinner, the three talked about the support group's future projects, Emily and Michael's wedding plans, and the lessons learned throughout that entire journey. "One last question," said Michael. "If you could go back in time and prevent the whole situation with Derek from happening, would you do it?" David and Emily looked at each other. "No," Emily answered without hesitation, "because if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have become who I am today. I wouldn't be helping dozens of other people, and I wouldn't have learned to value freedom and truth the way I do now. And I," said David, "wouldn't have learned to be a better father, more present, more attentive to the signs when someone I love is in danger." Michael smiled. "So you turned one of the worst possible situations into one of the best things that ever happened to you." "Exactly," said Emily. "And that's proof that it's always possible to rebuild a life, no matter how lost we may feel at any given moment." End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this story and where you're following us from. If you know someone who has been through a similar situation of psychological manipulation, leave your reflections in the comments. Do you believe Emily made the right decisions? We'll be happy to read your honest opinions. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to leave a like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other emotional stories that bring important reflections on relationships and family life.